Hi, folks. We're still waiting for Michael to come and join us, but in the meantime, I just thought what I would do is give you a little bit of an introduction into not only Michael Bradley and the Undertones, but also my relationship with the band and how they've become so. I'm trying to think of the right word. Iconic in my views. I think the thing about here we are, Michael. Michael, how you doing? Hi, Michael. Nearly there. Michael Bradley. Perfect. Well, we can see your house. We can't quite see you yet, but we can see your house.
There we
Good man. Fantastic. It's great to see you, Michael. Welcome to the virtual chair.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. You were about to say nice things about the Undertones. I should have let you say them.
Well, actually, I did say them all. I've said if you can get the re-recording, I've said it all already, and I was just about to repeat it. I'm just sitting here, and as you know, I've read the book a couple of times, but I've read it again over the last couple of days, and I have to say, I literally woke. First of all, there's two things that you're now responsible for. One is with my wife because I was laughing out loud, and the second thing is I've now got my hernia's now flared up again.
Well, thank you very much.
So it's all your fault. Look, Michael, one of the things that I'd forgotten about in all the conversations we have had over the years is you're from a family of 11.
Yeah.
Did you never think...
Number 9, I'm number 9 of 11.
What's that?
Number 9 of 11.
You're number 9. Did you never think you could just form a band with your own family members? No?
Well, funny enough, my father played in a band. He played the accordion in a Cayley band, who were quite well known across Ireland. Charlie Kelly's Cayley band. But the idea of guitars never featured in our house. It was an accordion, and there was a double bass which was stored in our front hall. None of us played it, and it was a band called Sean Canning. For some reason, that would have been stored in our front hall from time to time.
And your dad is Don. It was Don, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you never talked about music with you, did he? I mean, you never had that kind of conversation.
No, I don't. I don't know why. Probably because there's 11. 11 children. You don't. We were never ones for big conversations and so on. He was very. He would have been quiet, kind of. And he, whenever the band started, I would never have mentioned the band in the house. You see, that's the thing as well. So he probably didn't know I was in the band. Maybe he discovered it later on, but he did. He did actually end up. I have an image of him sitting with the radio, holding the radio, and listening to John Peel. Wow. That was after Teenage Kicks came out, but he never said anything, and I didn't say anything to him really. It was just kind of, and it wasn't a thing that we didn't speak, as in we're not speaking. It just wasn't really done. It was everything was just great. My mother and father just let me get on with it. They absolutely didn't say anything. They if I had needed anything, they would have done their best. But they just let me go. It's great.
And this is a recurring thing all the way through the book. People just don't talk to each other a lot, do they? I mean, you never dealt with anything. If there was a problem, you just didn't talk about it.
You talking in the band now?
The whole thing, the band, the family, the lot.
Yes. Well, sometimes you don't need to talk. Sometimes talking's overrated, I think. You can talk, and really know how much gets done.
Yeah.
We haven't said that. Whenever I was hanging around O'Neill's house, which is that's kind of the origin of the band, me and Billy Doherty hanging around someone else's house, we were always talking. We were always talking about records, the things that you do when you're 14, 15. You talk about how great the Doors are, that kind of thing. So there was always talk there. Later on, we still talked. I think we did talk, Don't talk now. I never phoned them. I never phoned the rest of the band. And there's the occasional email. But whenever we're playing somewhere, like we should have been playing this weekend and last weekend, whenever you're playing somewhere, once you're in the car, once you're at the sound check, it's always chatting, always catching up and stuff, and just usual jokes.
But let's go back to those days, because I mean, whenever you and the O'Neills and Billy were hanging around, it was called the Pit, wasn't it?
That was Damien's bedroom. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We would go to the front room. That's where the record player was. You see, the front room. And before we went into the front room, we used to sit in what they called their kitchen, which is their back room. Basically, Billy and I were like surrogate sons. We used to just sit there watching TV with the rest of the family. And then at some stage, then John or Vinny, I would say, right, we're going to into the room. That's when we went into the front room, and that's when the record playing started.
And it never occurred to me that you would be Rolling Stones fans. What was it about the Stones?
You have to remember there weren't that many bands in those days. What was it with the Rolling Stones? The Get Your Yayas Out LP. John had that. And whenever we were starting, we would have been influenced by Dr. Feelgood. So that kind of R&B thing would have been, because that R&B is pretty simple to play. And we would have done that. But then I remember John and Damien, especially talking about Get Your Yayas Out. And that was the only Rolling Stones record they had. They didn't have any of the studio stuff at all. And it was decided, John, who was kind of, he would have been the one that would have decided we do this. We decided to learn, get Jumpin' Jack Flash, the live version, and Carol, the Chuck Berry song, which is also on that, and Sympathy for the Devil. So they were kind of almost tailor-made for us. Having said that, Sympathy for the Devil was quite complicated. But yeah, the first time we ever played anywhere was in a school in Derry, and we did 6 songs. It was like a kind of variety concert. 6 songs, and 3 of them were from Get Your Yayas Out.
Yeah. Rolling Stones cover band.
Well, you could do worse.
Yeah. And why didn't the original name Monkeys Fuck Stick?
Well, it was never really that. That was a comment from John and Damien's brother. It was, we couldn't think of a name, and he says, "What about Monkey Fuck?" I thought it was great, but I thought it was great for 5 minutes, but never along the lines of let's call the band that. Fergal called us the Hot Rods whenever we were doing that first concert, because we didn't have a name, and the teacher asked, "What's the name of the band?" He asked us that as we were about to play. He was sort of saying, "What's the name of the band so I can announce you?" And Fergal says the Hot Rods, and we can't say that, but it was too late, And the guy says, "Right, boys, there's the next band, the Hot Rods." And then he called us Little Feet. Whenever a couple of months later we were doing a youth club on the Waterside, for some reason Little Feet was the name of the band. So after that, probably then got the Undertones, and that was kind of it.
Do you know the thing about Michael? You talk about this a lot in the book, and we've talked about it over the years. But with all the kind of the rumor and the myth around Fergal, you speak about him with quite a lot of fondness in the book, and you also talk about his bravado and his ballsiness, about the way he walked around Derry holding himself, and the fact that he had that, he just ballsed it out. He used to wear things and people would call him names. Do you look back at that period and actually recognize Fergal for what he become because of the way he was then?
That's a good question. No, I don't. Well, maybe so. Maybe he is a fellow that doesn't care. No, I mean, not in a bad way, as in doesn't care what people think of him. He will do what he wants to do, which is what he did even when he was like 16, 17. And talking fondly of him, like it's because we were in a band together, and we were kind of, you would have been good crack with him, friends with him, Of course, like we all fell out with each other occasionally from time to time, but whenever the band had some success, then the Fergal thing, he did get a wee bit distant from us, eventually. But that was like by 82, 83. For the first couple of years, we were good crack, Yeah.
But even when you look at the early footage, the early films, he did have star quality. He had that Ian Curtis type magnetism that you were drawn to him. I've been watching videos all day, of course. So, there is something about him that makes he was a great frontman.
Oh, absolutely. He was, David, first of all, he was as skinny as anything. He looked like Iggy Pop. We didn't realize at the time, but you look back now and when the shirt came off and so on. And the cigarettes, that was a great kind of, and he was fairly intense, he's a showman too, you see, like he grew up performing on the stage of the Guildhall in Derry and other faces, because he was like a fantastic boy singer. He was really skilled, and when his voice broke, it broke in the right way for us, which was great. But he was a much admired boy. I don't know. I don't want to say boy soprano because I don't really know what a soprano was. A boy singer, and so he always had that. And his mother, he came from a line of people associated with the fish. His mother ran the fish. And in fact, Fergal's niece now runs the fish. And Fergal's sister, she would still be running the fish. So it's still like, it's not a family business, but like the Sharkies were a big fish family. And he had that. Going through him. And then he was a music fan as well. He had slightly different tastes from us. I remember that at the time, whenever we first kind of started hanging around with him, he was a Led Zeppelin fan. He loved Led Zeppelin. He loved the Eagles too. but no, but it's a different Eagles, if you know what I mean. It's the same band. But the Eagles of One of These Nights and Desperado, just before they became the huge band, very good like them. And but he also liked the stuff that we liked. Because he bought Anarchy in the UK. He bought the single when it first came out. So it's a strange combination of old Derry Irish traditional music and new punk, punk stroke rock and roll.
And one of the other things I think that's very interesting is you were more affected by the New York style of punk rock than the British aspect of it. And that really kind of features quite heavily on the fact that you weren't image-led, which is similar to New York. It was a much more authentic thing. Was that the case?
Oh, absolutely. We were first, well, I was first aware of what was happening in New York whenever John used to read about it in the NME. So we heard of bands like Television and we heard of the Ramones because you read about them. And then whenever John eventually got a loan of the first Ramones LP, which he would have got it about the summer of '76, and that was the opener. That was the eye opener. We just thought this is absolutely brilliant. I remember John and I, we had started going to the Tech, and I remember John telling us about it. He borrowed it from a mutual friend, a fellow called Donald McDermott. He would have been a big music fan in Derry, and I remember John telling me about the Ramones, and the line I remember, it says, and the songs all sound the same, and it's brilliant. And it was that, it really was. That was like revolutionary. You've read that many times about the Ramones, but to be there and for someone to talk about the Ramones, and then when you hear the record, I remember I borrowed it. I borrowed it from John, who had borrowed it from someone else. I remember playing it in our house and just thinking this is fantastic. And then I got it for Christmas, 1976. So you were playing it. So that was the main New York one. But also around about the same time, we got the second New York Dolls LP, again borrowed from Donald McDermott, and we learned about 3 songs from that. We learned Babylon from that. We learned Puss in Boots, and I think we were playing Human Being from it too. So the second New York Dolls LP was a big thing for us, and then the 2 New York Dolls LPs, they were re-released as a double LP in 1977. So that was the first time we got to hear Trash and Personality Crisis. Again, we knew all the titles, but you never, because they were never played in the radio. Yeah.
And then, of course, John O'Neill started to write songs and presented you with Teenage Kicks. Were you aware that when he first played the song to you, did you think this is a single? Did you think it was an anthem, or did you just think, oh, that's good, John's writing songs?
No, because it wasn't the first song. First song he showed us was a real Dr. Feelgood ripoff called I Told You So.
Okay.
So that was that. And then he had another one. He had a short one inspired by the Ramones, I Don't Want to See You Again, which was like a wee 30-second song. So Teenage Kicks wasn't the first song that John presented, you know. In fact, I think Girls Don't Like It may have been before Teenage Kicks. But no, we didn't think it was like the one, you know, not at all. Obviously, by the time June '78 came around, we must have sort of edited our list, you know, because we knew we wanted to do 4 songs. So it was always going to be on it. But we also had, you know, Get Over You, which was we knew it was a good song as well. But of course, we weren't thinking in terms of singles, you know, because we thought you'll make one EP with Terry Hooley, and then that's it. Then you go home again, you know. So it took, in fact, you know, I think I say in the book as well, whenever we actually got the record, we were definitely disappointed with the sound of it. You know, I don't know what we were expecting. Maybe, or I sometimes think it was just there was fluff on the needle in O'Neill's record player, because they had a wee Fidelity record player, you know. It just didn't sound all that great. And in fact, even to be honest, whenever I heard it, and whenever I heard John Peel playing it, I didn't think it was that great. See, I knew that I wasn't a good judge because he loved it, and a lot of people loved it. So I knew to step back a wee bit. But it didn't. I didn't sort of think, my God, we've just made I Want to Hold Your Hand, you know. We just thought, sorry, it's a good record. Jesus, Peel loves it. This is brilliant, you know.
And I think that the John Peel story is we could spend an hour talking about that in itself. But you admitted to John Peel, you said to John Peel that you were leaving the band, and he said that's a great idea.
I was after the first LP. Yeah, I get these notions every so often, and I kind of thought it was a bit of the punk ethic, you know, as well. It was that you weren't in a band to become famous or to be a success, you know. So I was 19, and we'd made the record, made the first LP, and I did decide. I kind of says, right, I think I'll leave now. You know, I had no idea what else I would do. Just go back to Derry and probably go back to the tech or something, you know. And we were in London, and I don't know if our manager, we had a manager, still have a manager called Andy Ferguson. He was absolutely brilliant, and he kind of, I don't know if he set us up to talk to John Peel about it, you know. But I remember I was told to John Peel that Mickey was leaving the band, and he says, "Yeah." Well, I kind of think that's good, because it is a good thing to do, you know. They sort of, well, I've done that, and now I'm doing something else. Not that I had anything else to do. And a couple of days later, Andy, our manager, myself and Damien, we were in the office, and he said to me, he says, so leaving the band, eh? I says, what are you going to do? Don't know. I says, and what does your father do? I said, well, he worked in an agricultural wholesale place, you know. He's not working now. And he just left it there like that, and I kind of went, you know. I said, okay, all right, okay, I'll stay. And I did. I remember saying to Damien, right, that's it. I'm only in it for money from now on. Just that notion lasted about 2 minutes too.
I just want to rewind it back a wee bit, Mayo, because obviously we can't talk about, you know, those early days without mentioning Terry Hooley and also Belfast, because Belfast punk scene at the time was huge. And I know, but even in Derry, there was quite a scene that you had set up in and around the Casbah, but not everybody loved the Undertones. I mean, you got your fair amount of abuse, didn't you?
Yeah, very early days, we would have got the odd, some of the more traditional rock people in the Casbah. Some of them may have kind of looked down on us a wee bit. But by the time Teenage Kicks came out, the people in the Casbah all loved us, no matter what length their hair was. But by then, see, you had a wee bit of fame in Derry, and that's whenever guys would have just almost a natural reaction against somebody who was this punk rock thing and who were, you know, notions about themselves. So yeah, we would have got quite a lot. You know, guys wanted to hit you, you know, which is. But at that time, as I said, we didn't think, why do they want to hit us? You just accepted these guys are going to hit you. You know. Funny enough, I was contacting Sister Ghost, She, the Shannon O'Neill, she's a great band, but she put out a live collection for Women's Aid just a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago. And I says, great idea. I says, the Undertones did a benefit for Women's Aid in Derry in 1978, December 1978, because John and Damien's mother, Geraldine, she was one of the people that set up Women's Aid. So very naive of her. She thought, oh, well, maybe we did get money. She says we should do it. Would you do a concert for it? We says yes. And it was down in Shantallow Community Centre. And there was guys down there who just wanted to kill Fergal. And we were kind of told, we were warned, you're not going to be able to walk home from this, you know. And so that was like, it did get threatening violence. I don't think they ever caught us. But yeah, people would have, yeah.
And you thought at the time that Derry wasn't a dangerous place, but you were really frightened of Belfast, isn't that right?
Oh, well, that's because Derry at the time, and I hope this isn't controversial, Derry at the time didn't have the sectarianism of Belfast.
Okay.
So, we knew where we could go and where it was, you weren't going to turn. We always heard stories about Belfast, you walk around the corner and you're in the wrong place with the wrong religion, So we had that. We were worried about Belfast, absolutely. We still went, of course.
Yeah.
Because we went up, the first time we went up there to play it was the day before we did Teenage Kicks. It was for Terry's Battle of Bands. So we kind of knew that we were in safe territory there, Yeah, we would be nervous about going out of Derry. Certainly getting nervous going to Belfast.
And what were the Belfast audiences like that time? Because they were absolutely in thrall of, Rudy, the Outcast, and then later on Stiff Little Fingers. And, the Harp Bar was a real sort of epicenter of punk. How did they react to the Undertones? Was there that Derry-Belfast rivalry?
Not that we noticed, no, at the time. But we would have had a kind of an attitude towards Belfast bands as well, because we didn't know them. We thought we were jealous, definitely jealous of the fact that they were having records out. So we were kind of a bit of a chip on our shoulder at the same time. But whenever we were up, people loved it. One of the best things we ever did was the Battle of Bands. We were second last on. I don't know why we were second last on. Rudy were headlining because they were the big band in Belfast at the time. Stiff Little Fingers probably had decided not to get involved with it. It was very much a Good Vibrations thing. It was Jerry's thing. So we were second last on. And I think we thought we were good. At this stage, you see, we've been playing about 18 months, Casbah every weekend, Casbah and another pub down the street. So we were battle hardened, and we also knew as well, we had great crack on stage. It wasn't quite show bands, but Fergal was funny. I would do a bit of that, give a bit of that there as well. And Damien would shout out things as well. And we had about half a dozen of our friends there as well. So we were in great form, and we also had at least half a dozen good songs, great songs. So we enjoyed it. We kind of thought we'd done well. But what I do remember is Gavin Martin, who would have been one of the fanzine writers. Now, of course, he writes for everyone else, But I remember Gavin coming up and saying we were great and introduced himself and said, "You were brilliant," and all. We were all, "Oh, thanks very much," self-deprecating. But that was a big thing because we knew his name from the fanzines. But I don't think we knew, though, that he was just doing stuff for the NME, because we were mentioned in the NME a couple of weeks later, which is absolutely brilliant. The NME being our Bible.
One of the great parts of the book, and also your story, is the way you talk about how you signed the contract with Seymour Stein, and just the palaver of not knowing what the hell you'd done. And also what's really more entertaining is the realization years later and the kind of nearly almost, oh well, type attitude. Were you ever resentful about what you had done with that contract? Was there ever no?
No.
I knew you were
it was a great experience. And we thought we were smart too,
Mm.
And not in a really sort of stupid way, if that makes sense. We thought, right, I can't remember who it was decided, but we thought three of us will sign, and then Mickey, you and Fergal go over there, and you make it into a better contract. You get a better deal. So that once you're happy, you sign it, and then it's complete and it's done. So that was a neat way of doing it. And so we went over, and it was great. We went to see the Ramones. The Ramones, they happened to be there. That's probably why Seymour Stein was in London. We went to see the Ramones in the Hammersmith Odeon, and we met them. We were embarrassed, but we met the Ramones, and then we went to Seymour's flat, and him and Paul McNally from Sire. They sat opposite us. Fergal and me were there, and he started the negotiation. And it really was, we had no idea. He was talking about things that we knew nothing about. And Fergal kind of didn't, he would have maybe had an effort at bluffing, but even he knew. Didn't have a clue what we were doing. You don't realise, obviously nowadays people would have maybe an idea, or they'd know where to go for advice. We didn't know anybody. No one in Derry knew about it. And we kind of, it was like he was speaking ancient Greek to us, and nodded, and we eventually signed. I don't even know if we looked for more money. I think we must have looked for an advance, And of course we then had to tell, we rang O'Neill's house just to explain what the figure we had reached, and Billy on the phone, Billy Doherty, he was there. He was saying, no, ask for more money. The rich kids got £60,000 or something. And it was really bad, it's really embarrassing. We signed a terrible deal. But we were very, very lucky in that after we signed the terrible deal, we got a great manager who went back to Sire Records. He says, Seymour, he says, I'm going to tell the band there's no point in making records because they'd make more money. I don't know if he actually said they'd make more money chopping sticks, but basically that was the gist of it. It's not worth it. We'll have to give us a proper contract. We need it.
And listen, the thing about it is that very first appearance on Top of the Pops will be in my memory all my life. And I can remember it distinctly because my mum and dad were from Derry. So all of a sudden, there's these five guys from Derry who literally looked like they walked off the local football pitch and got on stage, and they're blowing everybody away. And for me, and I've told you this millions of times, for me, that was the moment where I stopped listening to Jim Reeves. That was Jim Reeves. Jim Reeves was dead to me because all I knew up to that point was the music that was being played in our house. Did you walk out the Top of the Pops and think that's it, we're pop stars?
No, we didn't think we were pop stars, but we thought our dreams have come true. We just thought this is absolutely brilliant. We couldn't have expected this to happen. And it really was brilliant, And even when I look back, years later, when I look back, I realised how brilliant it was. The fact that, as you say, we looked like we came from Derry because we did. That didn't happen. Mostly what bands did then was they went to London to try to make it. But the first time we were in London was to go on Top of the Pops. That's the first time the five of us were in London. So that was absolutely brilliant. You couldn't write that, And then of course we went back. We were there for 2 days. We went back and we played in a pub in Derry. The night after it was on Top of the Pops. No, it was just the pinnacle. It really was. We could have stopped there, and I think the five of us would have been very happy indeed. That was the top. It's such a cliche, but it's true. The Top of the Pops was the program to see bands.
And when you came back, was because I know that you didn't really get the press that you thought or that you think you would get after hearing all that. But obviously there must have been a celebration. It must have felt like a homecoming at the Casbah or wherever it was you were playing the next night.
Bizarrely, we didn't play in the Casbah. Well, we were booked to play in a place called the Rocking Chair. And in fact, I think there's a photograph in the book of the ad in the Derry Journal from the entertainment pages in the Derry Journal. And because it says tonight, straight out, last night, Top of the Pops, tonight, the Undertones, and then the next band afterwards, tomorrow the Bin Men. You know, so we were. It was, yeah, it was a celebration. We were conquering heroes. We flew in to Aldergrove, and we were, you know, guy gave us a guy in a van, drove us down, and we went straight to the rocking chair. We didn't go home. I don't think we went home, or did we? My memory, anyway, we went straight to the rocket chair and walked on, and you know, Vinny or somebody had put up all the gear, so we were there and we played. And it was like my sisters were all there. My brother filmed it. He had a Super 8 and he filmed it. Silent, of course, you know. And it was just, it was, you know, we were on top of the pops last night and now we're back in Derry. Isn't this brilliant? It really was. Absolutely fantastic.
And obviously, the top of the pop. I mean, you appeared on Top of the Pops loads of times, and I remember seeing your image change very, very subtly up to Love Parade, where it changed quite radically. But the thing that struck me about it was, even though you went on tour with the Clash, and you know you would have been coming into contact with other bands, you didn't really change how you looked or how you behaved on stage. You still looked kooky and goofy on stage and having a laugh. Was that a conscientious thing, or was that just natural?
Well, it was both. If that does it sound right to say it was, we deliberately decided to stay natural for the first couple of years, anyway. It was back to the punk thing, you know, as well. We knew that we weren't going to, you know, we weren't going to get Mohegans and wear, you know, studs in the leather jackets and all that. That was so corny, even by, you know, 1979. And we kind of, there was some kind of style to what we were wearing. It was, and it was a version of what people in teenagers in Derry would have worn a couple of years before. I remember we were we wore Skinners. Some of us wore Skinners, and I don't think even in Derry people were still wearing Skinners. Maybe a couple of diehards, but that was a deliberate thing to wear something different from what what you would have been expected to wear if you were in London. So there was a bit of that going on too. We wore, like, we didn't have some of us had Dr. Martin boots, but we didn't have Dr. Martin shoes until I would say 1979. I remember we were like on tour when I discovered there was such a thing as Dr. Martin shoes. We only knew of the boots, but we would have worn black Oxfords, you know, polished black Oxfords with the wee metal tips. So we would have worn that as well, and that would have been a like a fashion that guys would have worn at my school. Leaders where Billy and Fergal went as well, and John's school as well, except they had a uniform. So there was that kind of thing going on there. So we knew what we were doing, but you also knew as well not to look like a tube. You know, not to look like a guy who goes over the window, wearing completely different clothes from what he went over with. You know, so we were a bit. We knew what we were doing. Later on, I think we did then start sort of talking about clothes, and that. But I always put that down to a lack of confidence in the band, because we didn't have any hits, and we kind of, I think, you know, whenever you're in a band and your record's not doing as well as the last one, then people have ideas about how do we fix this instead of just ignoring everything. We kind of, oh right, okay, we'll go. And funny enough, one of the things, we went and got a haircut by a proper hairdresser. Can't remember his name now. Guy, he was in Dover Street in London. I remember trying to find out from you who it was.
Someone called Smile, wasn't it?
Who?
It was a song called Smile. I think you went to back in the.
Been something like that. He was. I will remember his name at some stage. So we did that, and but as I say, by that stage the writing was on the wall. You know, like 1981, 82. Then it was kind of. I would say it was almost over for us in my head. It was kind of over, even though we still made a couple of records. You know? So yeah. So how do we get into that?
Oh, we have to talk about Clash, because you know, you toured the States with the Clash, and they and very kind to you, and you were also at the Clash gig in New York when Penny Smith took the iconic picture of Paul Cinnamon smashing his Fender, I think it was. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I think I may have missed it though.
Yes. So let me recap. You were at the point where Elvis at Chapello, the Beatles at Shea Stadium, Sex Pistols at the Fair Trade Hotel or Fair Trade Hall, New York, Paul Cinnamon smashes guitar, London Calling, and you missed it.
Yeah, because I had seen them in Minneapolis, and you know, the Beatles sounds terrible, but the first place we did was St. Paul, not Minneapolis, St. Paul. We saw them there, and it was brilliant. And then we saw them in, I think, Chicago, and it was great. But if we were in New York, and it was 2 nights in New York. Now, no harm to the Clash, but that was our first time in New York. I wasn't going to stay in New York and just watch the Clash that you saw. I was going to go out to see New York. So that's my excuse. Yeah, absolutely. We did our show. We did our bit, and then I remember sitting back on way up in the balcony and watching them, and then I think I just decided, right, I'm going to go out. You know, afterwards, then I think I heard somebody, and Paul Cinnamon smashed his bass guitar. I went, oh right. I thought it was a terrible waste. What a great photograph, you know. So I would, if looking back, I would do the same thing again. Do the same thing. I'd go out and see New York in 1979 rather than seeing the Clash again.
But they didn't unimpress you. They were nice guys. And just look.
Oh, they're brilliant. And we saw them at just the right time. To be honest, we didn't give them enough rope. Loved the first LP. Didn't give them enough rope. Loved White Man Hammers with Pally and Clash City Rockers and so on. But the record that they had before we went on tour with them would have been the Cost of Living EP, which was okay. You know, like I fought the law. It's like I was thinking, why did you do that? You know, now you think it's great now, but it wasn't brilliant. It's not, you know, it's not White Man Hammers with Pally. Because we knew, well, I knew the Chris Christopherson version from a couple of years before. I thought it was a great song, of course, and Bobby Fuller too. So by the time we saw them, I wasn't expecting that much, you know, to be honest. And then you hear them doing a song called London Calling and Clampdown, and you think, oh, this is brilliant. This is really good. And I think did Mick Jones have better hair as well? I think he cut his hair because he had really long curly hair in the middle of 78 and 79. But they looked great, but also they were just so good. And they did Armageddon Time, you know, and I remember them doing Coca-Cola song, and they were brilliant, as well as doing White Man and Clash City Rockers and all that. So yeah, it was looking back, I think I was almost surprised at how good they were, you know. But they were brilliant, and that's one of the things whenever you're telling somebody about what you were doing in the band, I says, well, yeah, we toured with the Clash in 1979, and that's a nice thing. And you can say as well, and you know, we were on first, and then Bo Diddley was on next, and then it was the Clash, or in New York it was us, and then it was Sam and Dave, and then it was the Clash, you know, that's a pretty good lineup, to be honest.
Great lineups. The thing is, Michael, up to that point, you'd managed to avoid any connection with the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Fast forward a little bit, and you part wrote my favorite Undertone song. It's going, and of course, the controversy around it's going to happen was that it was about the hunger strikes. Now, there are different versions of the story, and even in your book, you said, yeah, it was and it wasn't. What?
Because it wasn't, you know. It's Schrodinger's cat. No, it wasn't. It's 1980, about October 1980. I remember the first hunger strike. I'll call it the first hunger strike because, and this is really the minutiae of the Troubles. There were 2 hunger strikes. The first one, the one that Raymond McCartney was on, that was 1980. That started 27th of October 1980. I'm nearly sure that's the date. And that lasted, and then it stopped. There was supposed to be some kind of agreement, but then that fell through. So the Bobby Sands one, then that started. But it was the first hunger strike that kind of Damien was affected by, you know. And he did want to. He was writing the song, you know, because we were recording this in January 1980. Sorry, January 1981. That's who I know it was about the first one, because we had the song.
Mm-hmm.
But without, again, maybe it comes back to that thing about us not talking enough. He did. He says it's about the hunger strikes. I think he did. He must have been, you know, he must have informed me in some way, and I would have been the one that would have been sort of writing the words for it. And I think I couldn't do it. He had the chorus, it's going to happen and so on, but I couldn't, and I kind of decided I couldn't do it as well. I tried, you know, I gave it some thought, and I realized no, because you're going to make a pig's ear of it. So I kind of says, I haven't got anything on it, you know, and it's there's the words now that I have. So the words are not about the hunger strike, but the intention that Damien had was about the hunger strike. So that's the answer. It's a messy answer, but it is the answer. But then you see it's complicated then by the fact that by the time It's Gonna Happen was chosen as a single. By the time the single was coming out, the second hunger strike had picked up, and that was a bigger news event. That was Bobby Sands getting elected. That was, you know, Bobby Sands dying. Coincidence of coincidences. The day that we were doing Top of the Pops was the day. So Damien wore the black armband. Felt strong about it. That wasn't really, don't think it was discussed that much, you know, we kind of knew, but it wasn't right, are we doing this or are we doing it? It was just, you do what you want to do. I didn't want to do it. I just didn't think it was, I just didn't want to do a gesture like that, you know. I'm not debating what Damien did. He really felt that strong about it. And then there's another thing too about it. The other thing that I remember in the book is that when we were practicing for the tour, we were in the pit, Damien's bedroom, and I remember the day that Bobby Sands was elected. He won the election for Man of South Tyrone, and their father, he put his head in the door and says, Bobby Sands won. And I remember that was in the middle of one of our practices. Well, we never kind of thought, well, this means this and that, you know, in terms of the band. It was just, oh, that's what happened in the news. And us being Catholics from Derry, we kind of, wow, you know, that was from our area.
Did the press ever question it, or was it just, that was it? It was just gone?
Don't think so. No, don't think so. It wasn't a huge hit.
Yeah.
Record was a big hit. I think it may have got top 20 or top 30. We I think one appearance in Top of the Pops. But no, I don't remember anything at all at the time. You know, there was so much else happening. People weren't going to, and also newspapers outside of music papers, certainly local papers, didn't really write much about bands in those days. You know, so there's much more focus on bands, and much more you're much more visible than you would have been then. So no, never went anywhere. Of course, the stories then, you know, afterwards, whenever people write about it, they say, "Oh, yeah, that's a song written about the hunger strikers," but it's not really. It should have been, but I didn't deliver.
One of the funny things, Michael, in your book is your interactions with other musicians and pop stars. They were never really that successful, were they?
No. Again, you know, that kind of that punk thing. That it wasn't about show business. You know, it's a pretty immature thing now, but at the time I felt that, you know, if you didn't like a band, if you didn't like a band's music, you didn't like a band.
Yeah.
Really. And the one that I kind of regret, a bit of me regrets it, you know, was sounds like one of those anecdotes. We were playing in New York. It was one of the shows, 1980, the tour in 1980. And we did a show in New York, and afterwards was a good show. And afterwards, I was talking to people out front, you know, signing the autograph and all. And I was aware of this very tall man beside me, and he kind of looked around. It was Phil Lynott, and I hated Thin Lizzy. We all hated Thin Lizzy, just the music, all the Kismo crap, you know. And he was sort of standing there, very, very nice, you know. And I said to him, we had actually, Fergal and I had reviewed one of his records on Radio 1 a few months before. And I said to him, a terrible thing. I said, I'm sorry, thought, I says, I can't, I really hate them, was it? I'm sorry. And he just kind of looked at me, like, right? You know?
Yeah.
Whereas any other musician would have gone, it's just, oh, that's great, and blah, blah, blah. And probably that's what I should have done, you know, but I just couldn't, you know. But, you know, we did have good interactions with other pop stars. In 1979, we did a show in Dalymount Park. It was a big festival, July 79. It was great. Headlined by Status Quo. And I think it was Billy and myself. We kind of wanted to meet Status Quo. We would have been fans, you know. And yes, Francis Rossi and Rick Parfitt brought us into the room with a line of guitars. It was like a guitar shop. There was a line of Telecasters. And they were kind of there to say, look at this place. They were just saying, hello, how are you doing? All we could see was just looking at these guitars. So we did meet Status Quo. You know, I think I may have told him that there was a Status Quo tribute band in Derry called Quo. There was about 74, 75. There was a band in Derry called Quo too. No one else remembers it apart from us. And I think I never saw them, but the reason why they were called Quo too is that they only played Status Quo. So that's why I was claiming that Derry invented the tribute band.
And towards the end, Michael, I mean, first of all, I think some of the records towards the end were some of the best records. Julie Ocean, Love Parade, they're great, great singles, great songs. But obviously, you know, you'd run your course and you weren't getting on and you had wives and girlfriends. I mean, was it amicable or was it simply a case of just, you know, let's just go our separate ways? Was there ever any bad feeling afterwards?
I don't think so, no. No, it was because there was the strain happening for a good, I would say a good year, maybe about a year between, say we broke up summer 83, maybe early summer 83, early summer 82. Yeah, in the autumn of 82, we were making the Center Pride LP. Now, whenever we were making it, we thought it was great. And people still like it. It's very, I know that you have some songs that you like, and people are very kind about it. But it wasn't as easy as the first two LPs were in terms of making, you know, it was long and it was convoluted. The record company didn't like it. So that kind of wore us down a bit. When it came out, it got some good reviews, but the singles didn't trouble the charts, as I say. The LP didn't do well either. So that's a wee bit of a sign that, well, it's a sign to some bands that, okay, time's up, you know. So I think whenever Fergal then decided that he wanted to leave, that's why most of the rest of us kind of went, good idea. Yeah, good idea. I remember a couple of weeks before it, having a discussion with Damien, not a talk with Damien O'Neill, and Damien says, he says, whenever we break up, because we were talking in those terms, we started saying, whenever this stops, you know, he says, do you want to keep on going? I says, we'll try and work on something. And we did, it didn't work out, you know. So we knew it was happening. So it was, I think I've said it before, it was a relief. Whenever it did stop, it was like, well, good, that's it now. You know, and then we were doing a couple of shows. And we had the last one that we did on our own was the Lyceum in London. That was great. And then we did the last show in England that was supporting Peter Gabriel at Selhurst Park. I can't remember, no great memories of that. And then the last one, we did a couple of shows in the continent, and the last one then was at Dalymount at a big festival, not at Dalymount, Punchestown Racecourse, supporting Dire Straits. And we were kind of just ready to go after that, you know.
I read, Lisa, the story last night of you walking in on Peter Gabriel while he was applying his makeup. And I literally, that was where my hernia gave. That was where it busted. Because before we go, Michael, because we just haven't had enough time to talk tonight. We really haven't. There's so many things I wanted to ask you about. There's a great story about you not inviting the boys to your wedding. I always wanted to know, did you invite them to your second marriage, your second wedding?
No, I don't think so.
And also, what do you think of the legacy of Teenage Kicks now? I mean, there's numerous cover versions. Every TV ad. It's all over the world. does it, when you hear it, does it still give you the tingles in the back of your neck like it does us? Or do you just think, ah, that'll pay for the lunch?
It's a wee reminder that, that we did do something that lasted. That's what it is. It's something that obviously something to be proud of, And now when I do listen to it, I do hear it, and I can hear that it was good. I can hear that we did a great job with it. No, it's. I always say as well, it has a life of its own. People, you would say to people, or not, I wouldn't say obviously, but some people say, "Have you ever heard of the Undertones?" And they go, "No." Have you heard of Teenage Kicks? Oh, wow, yeah. So it's more famous than the Undertones, which is nice.
What's the best cover version you've heard of it?
The one that sounds like Johnny Cash is a band called Union Station, Scottish band, and they do it like Ring of Fire.
Brilliant.
And it's great. I haven't heard it in a long time.
What's the worst version?
No such thing.
Very different.
Bad version. No, people always say. I remember whenever what do you call them? One Direction had it. Whatever One Direction were doing it, we thought, this is brilliant. I was a charity thing, so I don't think John got any money for the royalties. And then people would say, "I bet you hated that," and I would think, why on earth would you hate that? Somebody doing a hugely famous band doing one of your songs. It's like, first of all, at that stage I was like 55 or something. I said, I'm not the target audience here. So no, there's no such thing as a bad version.
Michael, I just want to say thank you very much. The last hour has just gone by too quickly. To anybody out there, this is a great book. I've read this book 3 times. It's the most un-rock and roll book you've ever going to read, and it's all the better for it. Michael Bradley, thanks very much for being on the book. Look forward to seeing you.